We begin tonight with a rare warning about our democracy. It is in dire straits, and that is not according to just one or two, but rather 13 presidential libraries dating back to Herbert Hoover, all of which on Thursday released a joint statement calling for a recommitment to the country's bedrock principles, including the rule of law and respecting a diversity of beliefs. Can't say this enough. This is an unprecedented move from the group. Never before have the presidential libraries engaged so directly in political affairs. And while the joint message stopped short of calling out individuals by name, the subject of the warning was clear. The declaration read, in part, Americans have a strong interest in supporting democratic movements and respect for human rights around the world because free societies elsewhere contribute to our own security and prosperity here at home. But that interest is undermined when others see our own house in disarray. Our elected officials must lead by example and govern effectively in ways that deliver for the American people. This, in turn, will help to restore trust in public service. Maybe you're thinking this sounds a bit melodramatic because things may not look like they're falling apart, but students of history will recall that one authoritarian method is too slowly to begin to chip away at democratic norms. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not going to overhaul the whole system in one fell swoop, but if you keep chipping away at it, it will finally and ultimately erode. As Tom Nichols writes in The Atlantic, the collapse of democracy in the United States will look more like an unspooling or an unwinding rather than some dramatic installation, of Gilead or Oceania. My guess is that it will be a federal breakdown that returns us to the late 1950s in all of the worst ways. Nichols admits he is guessing, but if informed, it might be an actually educated guess. Last month, a group of right-wing organizations and former Trump officials published something called Project 2025. It's essentially a roadmap for reshaping the federal government should the disgraced ex-president return to the White House. They want to gut the so-called administrative state from within by ousting federal employees that they believe are standing in the way of Trump's agenda and replacing them with like-minded officials more eager to fulfill their approach to governing. They believe on day one, they'll be able to commandeer, reshape, and do away with the, quote, deep state bureaucracy, in part by firing as many as 50,000 federal workers. And they have plans for the military as well. Former acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller contributed to this plan, and he wants Trump to immediately ban, quote, Marxist indoctrination and critical race theory programs and reinstate personnel dismissed for disobeying vaccine orders. As Nichols ends his essay, much of this stuff is nonsense, of course, but it'll be nonsense right up until the point it isn't. These are all names that would reappear in a second Trump administration. We know that. And this time, they'd move a lot faster in breaking down the federal guardrails around our democracy. And that should terrify all of us. Joining me now is Congressman and House Oversight Ranking Member Jamie Raskin. Congressman, it's great to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for making time for us this evening. What was your reaction to this unprecedented joint warning from the 13 presidential libraries?
Well, I'm glad that people who are concerned about American history are willing to intervene in the moment to say that the Trump movement is threatening to utterly derange and deform the American experiment. And that's where we are. We're still in the thick of this struggle. And so it's good to have people speaking out about that. They are laying out their plans to renew what Steve Bannon talked about at the very beginning of the Trump administration, which was to dismantle the deep state, by which he means the federal government that implements the laws of the people adopted by Congress. So if they can't repeal the Clean Air Act, if they can't repeal the Social Security Act, if they can't repeal the Clean Water Act or the Fair Labor Standards Act, they will make it impossible for the federal government to enforce any of these critical framework statutes.
And Congressman, let me get your thoughts on this plan, this so-called Project 2025 put forth by Trump allies. It sounds almost supervillain-esque. Why are they so desperate to gut the federal government? And how seriously should we take this?
Well, very seriously. I mean, we see the way that they targeted women's right to choose in Roe versus Wade. They packed the courts with Federalist Society right-wingers, and they demolished Roe versus Wade, and they've thrown the country into an uproar over this assault on women's rights. They've rolled the clock back on the civil rights progress that we've made since the 1960s and 70s in many different ways. I mean, you've got Governor DeSantis, who's trying to teach children that slavery was basically a skills training apprenticeship program in, the beginning of American history. And so what they're really talking about doing is demolishing and destroying the New Deal and repealing the administrative state that's used to enforce statutes like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the National Labor Relations Act. They want to make it impossible for federal laws to be implemented. Now, it's the president's job to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. That's the heart of his constitutional duty. But they, of course, want to take care that all of the laws be totally frustrated and defeated. And that's their vision. They want to return power to corrupt right-wing state governments and make the federal government just for military and national security state purposes and for, passing out corporate largesse to their best friends in business.
Congressman, let me pivot for a moment and get your thoughts, if I can, on the developments out of Georgia with Mark Meadows failing to move his Georgia election case to a federal court. I mean, as somebody who has investigated January 6th so closely as a result of the second impeachment trial, what do you make of that development and the argument that Mark Meadows was trying to make that he was simply doing his job as the White House chief of staff?
Well, the critical issue in that ruling, Eamon, was whether or not he was fulfilling his federal duties. And if he had been fulfilling his federal work assignment, then he really could have gotten his case removed to federal court. Those are statutes that are there to protect federal workers who are trying to implement civil rights laws, for example, against recalcitrant racist governments in the South. But the court, I think, rendered an excellent ruling saying if you're getting involved in politics generally as a federal worker, you're violating the Hatch Act. You've crossed the line to engaging in political work. And if you go all the way through just getting involved in a campaign to trying to overthrow an election, you're not just being involved unlawfully in campaigning, you're involved in a criminal assault against the constitutional order. None of those things can be protected by federal law, and none of them give you the refuge of the federal courts from a prosecution in state court for your crimes.
And of course, sir, our viewers know you very well as a congressman, but you were a constitutional law professor for many years. Let me get your thoughts on this effort to use the 14th Amendment to bar Trump from the 2024 ballot. Do you think it is a worthy legal strategy to pursue, or is it doomed to fail?
No, the January 6th Select Committee invoked it, and we talked about it also during the impeachment. It's gotten a new lease on life as an argument because two very conservative Federalist Society professors wrote this law review article for the UPenn Law Review. But Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says that anyone who's sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution who violates the oath by, quote, engaging in insurrection or rebellion shall never be allowed to hold federal or state office again. Those professors made the point that this is a self-executing provision, like the one saying you've got to be 35 years old to run for president. If you show up to get on the ballot in Colorado and you're 22 years old, the Board of Elections or the Secretary of State will just say you're not qualified. And they're making the point that these administrative actors can also say you're not qualified to someone who is engaged in insurrection against the union. So I think this is an issue that's going to break out all over the country, and inevitably it will make its way up to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't say you can't run for office if you've been convicted of insurrection or rebellion. It just says you can't have engaged in insurrection or rebellion, which implies that it can be determined as a civil matter and you don't need to go to criminal court. Of course, Congress already determined in the impeachment that President Trump had incited insurrection against the union, and there was a 57-43 vote to convict him of that on the Senate side. Not enough to get to the 2/3 of holding him culpable, but still robust bipartisan majorities in both houses saying that he had in fact engaged in insurrection by inciting it.
Congressman, we spend a lot of time on this show talking about your oversight colleague, James Comer, and his conspiracy-laden quest to try and connect Joe Biden to his son's foreign business dealings. Now you have House Republicans pushing for an impeachment inquiry into the president without any factual basis to do so. Do Republicans at this point even care about policy and getting things done for Americans? I mean, if this is what the base of their party wants, how do Democrats work to counter-program all of this nonsense?
Well, when the Trump movement took over the Republican Party, they didn't pass a platform, and that was a fairly explicit statement that their platform is just whatever Donald Trump tells them it is. It's not a party that's unified by any programmatic or policy purposes. It's unified simply by their subservience to Donald Trump and their willingness to do whatever he tells them to do. So, yeah, I think that what's definitive of the GOP today, alas, Lincoln's party, is that it's become a cult of authoritarian personality. They are going to impeachment simply because Donald Trump feels like he doesn't want to run against someone who's not been impeached when he's the first twice impeached president in U.S. history. I keep reminding my Republican colleagues that the constitutional standard for impeachment is treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, and they haven't laid any wrongdoing at the footsteps of Joe Biden. They've got nothing on him. They've got 91 criminal charges against Donald Trump in courts all over the land, and there's nothing against Joe Biden, and Trump can't live with that. So that's why they're saying they're not going to vote for a budget. They'll shut the government down unless there are impeachment proceedings initiated against Joe Biden.
And speaking of oversight, I got to ask you about Jared Kushner. I mean, you have asked Comer to subpoena Jared Kushner's investment firm over its ties to the Saudi Arabian government, to the Qatari government, United Arab Emirates as well. Can you explain why you are concerned? What have you seen that makes you worried about this, that you want to have subpoenaed?
Jared Kushner created a company the day after the Trump administration ended and proceeded to collect billions of dollars, more than $2 billion from the Saudi government for investment there, despite the fact that the sovereign investment funds investment advisors recommended against it. They were overruled by the homicidal crown prince himself, Mohammed bin Salman, who said he wanted to give that money to Jared Kushner in addition to a $25 million a year management fee. There's been very little of that money invested. The whole thing smells like a huge payback, a payoff essentially for everything that Kushner did for Mohammed bin Salman and the Saudis when he was running Middle East foreign policy there. And remember, he covered up for bin Salman's brutal dismemberment and assassination of Jamal Khashoggi, his drawing and quartering. He tilted towards Saudi Arabia in the Yemen war when there were just terrible atrocities taking place against the Yemen population. And in fact, Kushner had pushed for Saudi Arabia to be the first destination of Donald Trump in his foreign travel. So he got this huge payback. We've been trying to get documents showing what exactly they were doing for each other, but Jared Kushner refuses to comply. He's not answering any of the Democrats' requests. And Chairman Comer, he said he agrees with us that Kushner crossed a line of ethics. And if that's true, then he should go ahead and render a subpoena so Kushner will comply with our request so we can get to the bottom of this massive conflict of interest, likely Foreign Emoluments Clause violation, and crime against the public interest. And our foreign policy has been irrevocably damaged by what Jared Kushner did with Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf monarchies, and we want to get to the bottom of it.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, sir, it's always a pleasure to see you. It's great to see that you're doing well, sir. Thank you so much for coming back on the program, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for having me.